I'll say three different things were kind of going through my mind, right? Number one, African parents. So beyond the stereotypical like African pops who goes crazy when you have bad grades, because like it's college, you don't even gotta show your parents grades if you don't want to. It was more about, damn, bro, like you start overthinking about all the sacrifices your parents made to kind of like get you to where you at. You feel like you fumbling the bag. Just in the blessed position we're in, where like
Yeah. I lay on the scale, you gotta glow, you gotta glow. She had my attention, she gotta know.
I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of the Let's Get It podcast. I'm your host Zeke, and in this episode, I'm my friend Bacare is about adjusting to a 9-to-5 lifestyle and living in New York. I think if our content will finish on the region this episode, and hope you have a nice day and enjoy the show.
Hi. So, welcome to the podcast.
good to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks. So, first question I ask is, what would your origin story be, and how would you like to represent it?
My origin story. Yeah, I'd probably say my family's moved to New York. Like, I mean, like I was born in Seattle. Family moved when I was on 7. Moved to Kansas City actually for less than a year because we all hated it, and they got to New York around like, I don't know, like 2004, 2005. So I'll say my origin story would probably be number one, chronicling that part of my childhood when I moved, because it was definitely, an interesting time in my life. And then just like growing up in the Bronx, going into like, graduating college, and then, living out in Salt Lake for a little bit, being back in New York now. Like, yeah, just definitely each time that I've had to move in my life, and like everything that kind of transpired each of those times. So I felt like they were definitely all like pivotal times in different ways. And as far as like how, I would definitely say movie. And I'm definitely one of those people like who just be like, thinking one day like, yo, how would I tell my story? And as someone who doesn't read a ton, like of course, like I casually read, but like I'm not one of those people who's like knocking out a book every month. I think the idea of like, doing a movie just always been a bit more attractive. And like, I mean, I'm a movie guy, so like I'm watching movies all the time. So I definitely think that's how I would do it.
Nice. Who would direct the movie?
It depends. If I'm doing something that I'm a view to be super serious, I'm gonna say Spike Lee. Now, if I if I feel like I want something with a bit more of an edge to it, and it's just like like it's telling my story, but it's kind of taking its like left turns and stuff like that. I don't know, for whatever reason, I know he gets mixed reviews, but Jordan Peele is an interesting director to me. Like I tend to enjoy his work, so I mean that'd probably be the other option if not Spike. I'll say if it's a straightforward, more of like a biopic type of situation, definitely Spike. If I kind of want to get super crazy with it, then Jordan Peele.
And a supernatural, like the reason why we moved because this and this happened, and there's like a whole
Right.
theme.
For sure.
Nice. So that all the moving, how did you like adapt each time you had to move?
Yeah, it was interesting, bro. I mean, I think my first move leaving Seattle, I was kind of too young to really process it. It was just kind of like, as a kid, you're just like, damn, I don't want to leave. Like that's kind of just all you know. So then, you move to Kansas City where you don't know anyone. You're just kind of around like, family all the time and stuff like that. And we didn't even stay long enough for me to like hop into school. And then so like that was just kind of like, cool, I hate it here. I don't know anyone. I'm just kind of like, if I'm not home, we're just like, following like family members out somewhere or something like that. So it just wasn't a fun time. So adopting to Kansas City just really wasn't much of an adoption. It was just not enjoying it at all, right? Then New York comes, and it's just so much different than everything I experienced prior to that. Like you got to think like 7 to 8, like my whole life has been in Seattle for the most part. And Seattle was a lot more, I don't want to say suburban, but suburban. Like it's like a lot more chill, a lot more like family oriented. It's just kind of like, that environment, like that stereotypical like suburban kid story where like, you leave school, go home, get a bike, and you're just like out doing random shit all the time. And in New York wasn't that, especially the Bronx, especially like around the time we moved. So New York was, I would say, it was like not a bad transition in terms of like I didn't like it. It just took a lot more to get used to. Like it was a lot more hectic. It was a lot more like in your face, for lack of better wording. And so I think at that time I was just kind of like taking it all in. But then I felt like all my formative years happened in New York. So for me, I wouldn't say I look back and can remember if there was like a period in which I just had a tough time with it. It was kind of like, all right, cool, I'm here, I'm figuring it out. Um, and I would say the work, not maybe not use those words. I was gonna say worse, but it's not worse. I say the most tumultuous move I've had was like, graduating from Baruch, because we went to Baruch together. And then starting off my career at Goldman Sachs in Salt Lake City. And you could imagine, like, coming from, I feel like New York already puts you in a situation where you're gonna go to most cities in this country and do that compare and contrast shit and be like, yeah, I don't like this. Like, I gotta go back to New York immediately, right? So then, even removing that, if you just like look at Salt Lake in isolation, it's like the diversity is trash. It's a small city. There's not a ton of a social life, quote unquote, that tends to happen there. And if it is, it's just really not your vibe. That was a tough time. Like Salt Lake for me, especially my first 6 months, was really rough. Both because I was getting my ass kicked at work because like finance is finance, Goldman is Goldman. So like that ramp up period for me was just tough, just like kind of picking up everything, especially because I hopped into finance as someone who didn't study finance at all. So that within itself was just like tough to kind of like get over that hurdle. So it's like cool, like that 12 hours you're spending at work, like starting at 8, leaving at 8 or whatever, you're already just getting smoked, right? And then you go home to like this borderline desolate environment. And I lived in downtown, and it's still, just one of those cities that like tends to close quick. Like, people just not out and about at all hours. So it just got very quiet, and you just were in solitude a lot. And for me, that was kind of like the worst combination of like not enjoying your work, but also going home and not really enjoying your time there. And so it was rough. I think it only got better for me as I started meeting people and kind of creating my own circle. And then after that, it was kind of cool. Now we're dealing with whatever we're dealing with as a unit. Thankfully the Black network out there was really strong and tight knit. But yeah, Salt Lake was rough, bro. I can't even sugarcoat it. Like it was bad. Like it definitely had its highs, but it definitely had its like lows for real. Um, and so I just left Goldman like a few months ago. So I've been back in New York for a little bit now. And so I think if you ever end up moving out of New York, I think you would have a similar experience of like when you move out of New York and then come back, you find a whole new appreciation for it. Like I can't tell you how much I missed bodegas, my nigga. Like, like bodegas alone was one of the things where like you leave them shits and you really learn to value them, bro, because it's so hard to find something similar to that. Like, yo, like the counterpart of bodega in most states probably like a 7-Eleven, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like the gas station. It's like, no, that's not it. Like, why can't I grab a sandwich whenever I want to? You feel me? So yeah, I'll say Salt Lake was definitely rough, and then moving back to New York this time around, I'm just honestly I've been like having a blast, bro. Like it's just definitely back to like seeing people I haven't seen in a while, just being around family, a ton and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been dope. Can't complain.
Yeah, there was a whole lot in that. I can definitely see Jordan Peele coming in when you were like in Salt Lake by yourself and it gets eerie and a horror aspect to it.
Oh yeah, bro. I could get crazy with that Utah part of my life, bro. Like, yeah.
And then definitely, and also New York is walkable, so you could just walk places and it's reasonable. You're not like weird, like I'm gonna walk a couple miles. It would have to be.
Yeah, the thing with that was because I was living downtown, so I was walking distance from work. So I went in thinking, all right, I don't gotta buy a car because like I had my license, like I grabbed my license like 2017, but I was never driving in New York for real. Like I kind of just like went to a driving school, got some lessons, passed the test the first try, and never drove again. So it was like when I was moving to Salt Lake, it was like at first I was like, yo, I want a car. Then I was like, okay, cool, I could probably kind of escape without buying one because honestly, from day one, I was like, yo, I need to leave. So it's just kind of like, all right, bust my ass at work, crush it, and get a transfer back to New York. So I just really wasn't trying to make a life out of Salt Lake. It was kind of just like, do the bare minimum so that if I had to just drop everything and go, give it away, whatever, like I just can do that and just keep it pushing, right? So the car shit at first, I was kind of like, yo, I want one, but then it just probably doesn't make sense. So I'm not gonna grab one. And I'm telling you now, bro, like going to work wasn't an issue. A lot of social stuff kind of happened in downtown too, so that wasn't too big of an issue. But something as simple as grocery shopping was the biggest hassle, bro. And like, it was like double fisted mad grocery bags out of an Uber every week. Was just like, yo, after a while, I'm like, nah, I need a car. So yeah, definitely the walkable is huge, bro. I think that's something that New York probably shares with very few other cities with how walkable it is. And like, yeah, that's one of them aspects that you OD miss when you leave.
You're like, now I got, yeah, because I still don't have my license. And then because I live in New York, there's kind of no point.
Yeah, like you don't even you never have to drive in New York. You know what I mean? I think there's instances where it could be convenient, like especially for me, like I live uptown, so me going to Queens, for example, was a journey because I got to go into
Yeah.
Manhattan and then take another train to leave versus just like hopping on the bridge and going across, right? So it can add some convenience, but I think the amount of inconvenience owning a car has in New York also is like one of those things where like it totally makes sense to never have a car here either. It's just really like what you prefer. You never need one though. So
Yeah. Cool. So let's go back to college. So seemed like you were like a person who kind of found yourself or was finding yourself in college. How was that journey?
yeah, college was interesting, man. I mean, I think for me, like I came in, I thought life was sweet when we went to college, bro. Like that's the best way to put it. Like, cause I went to school in the Bronx, and I was kind of in those situations where like I went to a horrible school, so like you never really had to super exert yourself to excel in that space. If that makes sense. Like, so I was definitely one of those people who was chilling, who was like decently smart, and just was like, had a really high GPA and didn't feel like, I had to go home and study every day. You get what I mean? So I think because that's kind of like the high school experience I had was like cool. Like I'm kind of coasting, I'm kind of chilling, and I have like a 90 something GPA playing for the ball team and stuff like that. Like I just didn't have a real work ethic yet. So first semester in Baruch, I got smoked, bro. Like I think I had like a 2.4 GPA after my first semester. For me, that was extremely humbling, bro. Like I was one of those people who again never had like bad grades growing up. So that was one of them times where like, yeah, that was a gut punch. So I think that was kind of like a great reality check for me, and I'm glad it happened when it did because it kind of set the standard for the rest of my college experience. So like, by the time I graduated, I had like a 3.4, but that's because I had to crush every semester after that. I needed to have a 3.7 semester, a 3.8 semester, a 3.4, 3.3. Like you just kind of like at that point now know, okay, cool, I don't have any more room to mess up. So I just kind of like have to like find that pocket and kind of like figure out, my like how I can best put myself in a situation to succeed in college. And for me, again, like I'm not one of those people who can sit down and just study for hours on end. So I had to just kind of get creative with like how I like prep for classes and stuff like that. So from like the educational standpoint, it was like, all right, cool. Like you got punched in your face your first semester, but then now you got to get on your bully. And then the other side of that was like the social aspect, right? And so I think college for me, like I was definitely one of them Bronx kids who, if I was leaving the Bronx, it was go to Manhattan and come right back up. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't spending a ton of time in other boroughs growing up. Like in high school, like I spent one summer working in Brooklyn, and that's about it. So that was an interesting experience. So it was like, all right, cool. Now this is a lot more of a diverse environment than I've ever been a part of by and large, right? And so like beyond just like meeting people in other boroughs, it's like the demographics are very different. Like, like Baruch is one of those schools that always kind of gets that nod for being one of the most diverse public schools. And you see it. Like you're on campus and you feel the vibe of that, right? So I think that was a new learning experience for me, kind of like, meeting people who are of extremely different cultures and kind of like, expanding your mindset as far as like, being able to kind of like navigate those kind of conversations, learning about people and their background, how they got to where they're at, and, at this point in their life and stuff like that. So I'll say the social aspect was really dope in terms of just meeting a ton of people. And like a lot of my best friendships now spawned from Baruch, right? And then from the career standpoint, I think being a part of the UMLA program, which you was a part of as well, being a part of Zeke, that was the foundation for a lot of, the wins that I caught in college, right? Because I think I'm one of those people who benefited so much from mentorship more than anything. So, I had upperclassmen who were like, after first semester, like, yo, I'm gonna help you with your resume. Yo, I'm gonna help you put together your LinkedIn. Yo, I'm gonna help you mock interview. And so like, it just kind of like was like that staggered effect of like, okay, cool. Like I'm a freshman, I kind of have some skeleton of a resume. All right, boom. I spent the summer after my freshman year working for Zeke as a peer mentor, right? Then cool. Like now I have like the on campus, e-board position, with Sikh Society, right? Then I'm getting into like America Needs You, MLT, and all these programs because I have the upperclassmen there kind of just like, kind of like helping me, steer more than anything. It's like, cool. Like they're going to course correct, kind of like tell you like what, they did that works for them. And then, you start getting to these like, diversity pipeline programs and professional development programs. And then that's kind of like where a lot of my internships came from. So like, my first internship at AOL was a product of my involvement in the American Needs You program. My second internship at Google in California was a product of like my involvement in MLT. And then, I think, like by that time having like a decently strong resume, a lot of that led to, my Goldman offer, which for me was a big deal because, I think had a lot of anxiety about leaving college without a job offer. Like for whatever reason, like I just like made that a thing in my mind that like I just had to walk with a job offer. So I went crazy my senior year. Like I took 6 classes both semesters, constantly was interviewing super crazy like that first semester senior year. And thankfully by the end of the semester, which was like November, I had an offer from Goldman and that was like a huge weight off my back. It was like, cool, I have an offer from like a top company I was targeting. And so at that point, it was just like, cool, like this is a huge part of my stress that's just like gone now. And so I can at least go into like second semester senior year, just like kind of running towards the finish line. And so I'll say, yeah, those are the 3 categories I would kind of like break down Baruch. It was like a lot of the educational stuff early on and big lessons I had to learn and really developing that work ethic, which was full circle moment. Like a lot of that led to like, my success at Goldman, because Goldman was kind of similar trajectory. Like you got smoked your first few months, had to develop that work ethic and that expertise. And then you just kind of like move into a space where like, you're building up to be a top performer. So the educational part of Baruch, the social part of Baruch, and the career part of Baruch, with those all 3 in different ways, huge parts of my life for sure. I think you're speaking on mute.
Yeah. So let's go back to the education. So once you got humbled, how kind of kept you? What kind of pushed you to keep going instead of like some people they kind of fall and they stay down?
I'll say I'll say 3 different things were kind of going through my mind, right? Number one, African parents. So beyond the stereotypical like African pops who goes crazy when you have bad grades, because like it's college, you don't even gotta show your parents grades if you don't want to. It was more about, damn, bro, like you start overthinking about all the sacrifices your parents made to kind of like get you to where you at, but you feel like you fumbling the bag. Especially in the blessed position we're in, where like we're in Baruch, tuition free. Like you feel me? Like that's just like it was just a very uncomfortable space where I'm just like, damn, like I'm like dropping the ball here. 2, I would say, is definitely like peers. So I mean, I left first semester 2.4, but then I have friends who were, 3.5s, 3.7s, and stuff like that. People who just like crushed their first semester. And for me, I'm not one of those people who's like hateful in that way. I think at that time it was more motivation. It was like, cool, like I got a lot of people around me who's crushing shit. I gotta get on my shit to like kind of like match them. So for me, it was just like kind of like being competitive within myself. That cool, like this is just not the space that I'm comfortable being in. I know kind of like where I want to be, and so with that, now I gotta start like kind of figuring out, how I could like, learn from this, like all the mistakes I made that first semester, to make sure like, that doesn't happen again. So I think, having friends who were like kind of crushing shit and kind of like seeing what they were doing that was working for them and kind of like infusing that into my methods was definitely a key part for me too. And I'll say lastly, I think the support system of like Seek, right? I think that, like having the counselors there, like Rebecca and Christy, I think number one, like they kept it a buck. Like they didn't sugarcoat shit with you. Like they kind of told you what it was, but then also it was not like it was not a conversation of like, all right, you fucked up, figure it out. It's like, cool, what you messed up, but then what can we do to help you, right? You know, what like is it extra tutoring that you need? Like, is it resources or whatever? Like, whatever it's gonna be, like we're here to help provide that support or help point you in the direction to find that support and things of that nature. So I'll say it was kind of like a three-pronged attack where I just ended up kind of like leaving first semester with kind of like a game plan. And then from there, it was just about execution more than anything. So
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I can see that. And then let's go to like the social aspect with mentoring. How was it like mentoring and being mentored? Did you see any similarities or differences?
yeah, I mean, I think for me, being a mentee helped me figure out my mentorship style because I think I definitely had a lot of mentors in my time at Baruch. And because of that, I was able to kind of like pull from each experience of like, cool, this is something that this person is doing really well that's helping me out, right? Or this is another thing that this person is doing really well. Or in the opposite end of the spectrum, like, all right, this is something that like he does or she does that doesn't necessarily work well for me. And so I think being able to kind of craft my mentorship style from my experience as a mentee was huge. And then that summer when I was a peer mentor for Zeke, I think number one was a really dope experience. But two, because yeah, I mean, you ended up being one of the people that I menteed. But more than anything, it was just like one of those situations where, you know, you had some semblance of like a responsibility, right? So like you from whatever hour to hour in the days you were working, you know, you had to work for Seek. But for me, it wasn't like a job. Like for me, that shit was dope just because number one, you know, you're working with people who is a similar background, right? So like you kind of have a really good understanding for what people are going through, like what are some of the hurdles that they're going to experience in the college atmosphere, and so you're kind of able to kind of be that cushion, where it's like, oh, cool, like yo, I know this is something that was really rough for me. I could circumvent that, kind of like kind of like help them through it ahead of time, so they don't gotta like hit the same walls I hit or made the same mistakes I made. So I loved mentoring, to be honest. Like mentorship was one of my favorite things I got the opportunity to do at Baruch. And I think once I stopped having to do it for Seek as a job, it just ended up continuing to be just a very organic thing. Like the people I met as mentees that summer, like I was cool with the rest of college. And beyond that, you just started, meeting a ton of people. It's like, cool, like if I do American Needs, you know how fruitful it was for me, I'm gonna help as many people as I can get in that program. Same thing with MLT, same thing with internship prep, like mock interview and resumes, LinkedIn, like what a lot of the things that people did for me as a mentee, I was just huge on paying it forward, right? And just kind of like, I was big on that, like that corny mantra, lift as you climb. Like, let me not say corny, but like overly said probably. Like, just like that common thing of like, yo, lift as you climb, but like, nah, that's real. Like, it's like one of those things where like you can't take all the fruits of like this like environment and not want to pay it forward and not want to like be able to kind of like continue that path, because like if I just took everything that people gave me and just ran with it and never helped anybody else, like that's kind of wild. Like I just wasn't comfortable doing that. So yeah, mentorship was huge for me. I think it was a big part of my journey at Baruch, and it continued to be like a big part of my journey elsewhere. Like ended up finding pockets where I was able to be a peer mentor at Goldman. You know, even just outside of like a corporate environment, just kind of like having different mentorship, like relationships, stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely a huge part of my experience for sure.
Yeah, being mentors, it's sometimes just fun. It's like this is a cool experience having that impact on people, and then they come back like
Yeah.
it actually worked out. You're like, it did. Cool.
Yeah, and thing is, because think about it this way, like the way I looked at it is like when I saw you and a lot of other people that were mentees in my class end up going back and be mentors, for me, that was the win. Like for me, it was like a cool, like he got whatever he got. Like I ain't perfect. Like I'm sure there was a plenty of times where like you was like, yo, this dude's a bozo, right? Like I'm sure I got you dumb tight plenty of times. But for me, it was the fact that like you got whatever you got out of that sick environment to want to go back and be a mentor too. I was like, cool, this is the W. Like this is where you see going to continue to succeed, because we have people who constantly want to give back. So when I saw that, I was like, cool, like clearly something is going right, if anything. So
And there's something right. At least one thing turned out good.
right.
And then you changed your major once or twice.
Uh, Technically none, but once, right? So I came into Baruch as an accounting major on paper, but not knowing shit about accounting. Um, and so I went through first semester still having an accounting major, I want to say, and probably towards the end of that semester or going into second semester of freshman year, I kind of knew it was quiet for accounting. Like I just wasn't, once like you started learning more about it and having a better gauge for it and starting to like at the time do some networking where you're actually talking to people who are doing accounting as a job and just like studying accounting on campus and hearing more about it. I just knew it wasn't going to be a lifestyle fit for me. Like it just didn't sound interesting at all. So Darnid Kaya, which I'm not sure if you had the pleasure of like
Yeah.
meeting at Boog, was a huge part of me kind of figuring out what next steps were going to be for me. And again, another one of those mentorship figures I had during my time at Baruch, mentor figures. Um, so I ended up changing my major to business communications or corporate communications. And it's funny because Baruch is like it's like that common corp com joke where like a lot of people, leave Zicklin or flunk out of Zicklin or whatever and hop right into corp com. So like, it kind of does have that, that like kind of like has that aesthetic at Baruch. But for me, it was like, no, this is just genuinely the classes I'm enjoying the most. Like I'm enjoying my marketing classes and my communication classes the most. And so from just like a educational standpoint, like, no, this is actually the content that I'm like messing with the most. So like, all right, these are going to be the classes that I tend to do the best in, right? But then two, when I was just thinking about career stuff, I was like, yo, I don't know what I'm going to want to do in 10 years. So from a major standpoint, I'm just not going to be married to the idea of like, all right, I have to do actuarial science because I have to be an actuarial scientist or accountant, for X amount of years. It's about to be cool. What is the major that's going to give me a broad enough skill set to just kind of like do well in whatever I decide to do? And so I think what you get out of the corp com major, especially if you luck out with having some of the better professors in that department, is stuff that's super applicable to anything you decide to do. Like, I don't know a job that you're not gonna have to be decent, at least not even if you're not amazing, but be decent at presenting materials, right? Be decent at communication, both email, like both written and verbal communication. Being good at being able to deliver stuff in a concise manner, right? So it's beyond just like, people don't ever want to read a 7 paragraph, email. So you're able to kind of like consolidate information and make it like digestible to whatever audience that you got to deal with. And I think that's a lot of the stuff you got, or I was getting out of that major that I just valued a ton because I'm like, cool, like there's never not going to be a career path I decide to go on where I'm not going to be able to leverage these skills. So that's kind of like what led me to choosing that major. And I want to say, if not officially the end of my first semester of freshman year, I think definitely by second semester I had that major. So I was just kind of like, I didn't even care to go deeper into Zicklin. It was like I just like, so for me it wasn't one of them like flunk out situations that like we kind of saw a ton of. It was more about, yeah, I just know I'm not gonna like mess with this at all, so let me not even waste time and just dive right into the stuff that I am interested in. So yeah, it didn't take me long to change my major, and once I changed it, like I never looked back. So
Yeah, Zippo was rough.
yeah, I did not envy y'all at all.
I was like, let me change my major 2 times just to make sure.
Right. Which is funny though, because I'm saying all this and I literally left Baruch and went right into finance. So like it's definitely one of those situations where it's just like, all right, from a major standpoint, soft skill standpoint, I'm valid. I got none of the technical skills though. Never took a finance class at Baruch, never took an accounting class at Baruch. But even that, I just enjoyed that because that was just a huge part of my journey, right? Like, getting from the point where I knew nothing, wasn't doing well, struggled my way through everything in that job, took advantage of whatever like on the job training was available, online modules, YouTube, whatever it was going to take to me to learn it. And then fast forwarding, getting promoted after my first year and a half, leading, 2 teams by the time I was in my third year and stuff like that. Like it was it was an interesting trajectory. It started off rough, but ended up like kind of being a situation where like, yeah, I did well. But by the time I was leaving Goldman, it was less about being good or bad at the job. It was more about, yeah, I'm just ready to try something new. And I know even though I got relatively good at the role and good in finance in general, I just didn't enjoy the content. So I was just ready for a next step to just kind of like do something else. But I wasn't running away or feeling like I was running away because I just was bad at the job. Like thankfully that wasn't a situation. But had I left after my first year, that totally would have been what it was. It definitely would have been like, yo, I hate this shit. I'm terrible at it. I'm out. So it kind of like was one of those situations where, like, you look back after spending 3 years there, and it's like, oh, cool, like that ended up working out for you. Even though you was probably miserable for a decent amount of it, like it came when you think about it now, you look back at it and you reflect, like that was worth it. So
Yeah. That's just a funny thing. You're like, I'm gonna get away from it, and it comes right back into your life. Like, hey,
yeah,
it
like it went from avoiding the classes to like that being my day to day. Like that's crazy.
Zeke was like, what gets you one way or another?
That
You can also ask me questions if you have any questions.
huh?
You can also ask me questions if you have any questions.
For sure. I mean, even for you though, like when you were going through Baruch, like your first year, like what were those things that were really rough for you? Because I love hearing that because I think all of us in one way or another struggled our first year, but it could have been for very different reasons. So like, when you came to Baruch, like what were the tougher things for you?
I think it's more just finding my identity because for like school, I went to a hard high school, so pretty much education was I kind of understood my group with that. But in terms of like what I want to do after I graduated,
Mm,
I never had that answer. And then it was like,
right,
so the first year was mostly like proving to myself that college wasn't that hard. Because like every time we go to the next step, everybody's always gassing up like it's going to be the hardest thing in the world. So my
right.
mindset was like, nah, I got this.
Mm. And I remember at one point when you started the graphic design stuff you were doing on campus, like for me at the time, I didn't know that was something you was even remotely interested in. So at one point, did that become a thing for you where it's okay, this is something that I know I'm good at and I actually want to pursue it? Like when did that kind of transition happen for you?
So that happened before because I used to be into like art and stuff like drawing up into high
Hmm.
school. And then I didn't go to my art high schools, like art high schools like audition. So I went to a
Hmm.
regular high school. I did art for 1 year and then kind of just dropped it. So when to college during the summer, when I heard about new media arts, I was like, oh, this is a good minor to do to get
Right.
back into it. And then
Yeah, that's dope.
I made my portfolio, then make a portfolio website, and it kind of just went live. And I was like, well, might as well just start now.
And are you still doing a lot of graphic design stuff still?
Kind of on and off. I kind of like take
Mm.
breaks.
Did you design that shirt? Because I need one, yo.
Yeah, like to get like to like I have like every design, all the stuff set. I just need to move out
Hmm.
so then I can start the business.
For sure. Yeah, let me know. I need one.
I got all the designs and everything. So yeah, that's kind of how it was. So it kind of something
Mm.
like it was like let me get back into this because I used to enjoy it.
For sure. And I think one thing I noticed a lot about your journey at Baruch is that over time you came out your shell OD. I'll definitely say, and I don't know how much of this you felt about yourself. I would say like your freshman year, you were a lot more reserved into yourself. And I think you got a lot more comfortable around us and around people in general as you kind of like, went through college over a few years. So, how hard was that? Like, kind of like getting out of your shell, getting out of your comfort zone and just like kind of like putting yourself out there, just like you kind of being open to meet new people and all that stuff. Like how tough was that for you?
I'd say that was mostly like for me. I'm a naturally reserved person. I'm just like in
Yeah.
the background, just watching everybody. And then it was also and then so like the first year was mostly me just trying to fill out the whole school, just seeing like okay, how is everything? Where do I feel comfortable? Where it's like what to do, and then after I got confident. I have to like I filled everything out. Then I started like, okay, now it's time to like do things. Is
Hmm.
mostly So like freshman year was mostly me. My thought I had was like, let me just focus on school right now so I get a good foundation, and then I just join a bunch of things after that.
So, and do you feel as if this is a question like we tend to talk about a lot? Like, if not Baruch, where do you think you would have gone, and how different experience do you think you would have had you gone to another school?
I probably would have went to like City College
Mm,
and did like try engineering there, and probably would have had like a similar journey because like most people know I got a 0 in the midterm for programming. So if I
mm,
would get supposed to that earlier in City, it probably would like a similar situation. So I probably would like
gotcha. Yeah, funny enough, bro, like Baruch was not my first choice in the CUNY app. Like I was actually sold on going to Hunter, funny enough. They like the college tours, like their campus. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna run with this being my first choice. And I got in. So I'm like, I bet it's lit. And if I got a call from Christy and she was calling me about seeking UMLA. I remember this shit vividly because it was so funny because like she calls me, explains what Seek is, I'm hearing about it. I'm like, cool. This sounds interesting. Like I'm liking it. Sound like having some type of community on campus, stuff like that. She messaged the financial aid. I'm like, I bet. Like, okay, like talking to me nice right now. And she messaged UMLA, and I'm like, all right, this okay. And and then all I hear was Saturday sessions. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool on that. Like she said the Saturday workshops, and I'm like, yo, Seek, it definitely sounds interesting, but the UMLA thing, I don't think is for me. And I left it at that. She sends me the application. I don't fill it out. The deadline passes and everything. And then one day, my guidance counselor from my high school, I was super cool. It stops me in the hallway, like, yo, did you get a call from Chrissy Perez the other day? I'm like, nah, time out, son. Like, how the hell did she even know to call you? And so we ended up like talking about it real quick. And she was kind of telling me that, like, yeah, she really wants to set up, like, she really wants to like do the application for you. And she extended the deadline, whatever. So just like do it. And I'm like, all right, at this point now, like I might as well. And so through getting kind of like forced into it, like I ended up like going through and like applying to everything. And then that's just pretty much what ended up happening. I ended up coming to Baruch after doing all the, you know, kind of like UMLA interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, at the time, like I did not think I was gonna go anywhere but Hunter, to be honest, especially after I got in.
It was like, this is it. I'm set.
Right.
And life was like, no. Like does
Yeah,
that
nah, bro.
sometimes. Yeah, I heard about Seek. I was doing college now at City Tech the year
Hmm.
before, like the summer after my junior year, and I was like, I kept that back in my mind, like, okay, so I'm gonna do Seek, and then Baruch was the only Seek program I got into, so I was like, might as well.
Yeah, I mean, if were you, because I know you're from Brooklyn, so like, did you think about like Brooklyn College and a lot of those other CUNYs a lot, or
Yeah,
were you just kind of like, yeah, I'm not even trying to stay in Brooklyn at all?
Brooklyn College is tech far from where I live. It's like for like
Mm.
turns on the bus and train. So like I took my SAT there, so I was like, this is far.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then I was talking to my friend in lunchtime. I was like, trying to figure out what college. She was like, just go to Baruch, and I was like, you're right. I had, I had everything I
Yeah,
needed.
Brooke was definitely like that happy accident. Like, you didn't expect it to turn out how it turned out, but it was like the best shit ever. And I mean, for me, like if I think about that question, like I don't know what I would have been out of Hunter, like especially because, like I said, like those programs that I did laid all the groundwork for all the opportunities that I got. Like Hunter, I mean, in American News, you definitely see Hunter people, but especially in MLT, like they're not like Hunter just doesn't really breed. Like a lot of people just tend to be in those type of programs. I just think it's just not well known enough. Out of like I mean, Brooke is
Yeah,
very business centric, so you're just gonna naturally have a lot of people who just kind of like find those programs and like kind of like dispel it. But at other CUNYs, I wasn't seeing that kind of like experience happen a ton. So I mean, every time I think about what life would have been out of Brook, like I have no idea what I would have did, bro. Like I don't know what I would have majored in. I don't know if I would have found communications there. I don't know if I would have probably tried to stick it out of accounting. Like I'm like every time I think about it, I was like, yeah, who knows? Like it's like that Kanye mic drop. I guess we'll never know. Like,
it's like whatever happened if I lost, guess we'll never know.
all right.
It was fun though meeting you. It was like, oh, cool. It got pretty cool.
Yeah, man, the Baruch was one of those places where just like, yo, you really could have came to Baruch, like you like came to campus and just fully been yourself, and like you would have been fine. Like I think that was the interesting thing where you definitely have moments where like you definitely dial it back because okay, cool, like this is just like an area. This is just a matter of maturing and like I need knowing that like I don't got to be in campus wilding out 24/7, right? But I think generally, you know people definitely just kind of like came into Brugge their full selves, and so it was very like I would say Brugge more than anything was very organic. Like it was very much like people just kind of came in with whatever they were gonna be, found your circles, found your friends, and it was just that. Like it was very little like superficial bullshit that came by. At least in my experience, like I didn't experience a lot of that. Like you definitely have like transactional relationships at Brook too. Like people you just kind of like know what you're gonna get out of them, and then that's just is what it's gonna be. But beyond that, like it wasn't too much of like an issue. You get what I mean? It was kind of
Yeah.
like cool. Like you might just be cool with someone because you have a class with them, and it's probably not gonna be that like anything beyond that. But then the friendships that I've gotten out of Brew, like I said, a lot of those are extremely lasting relationships. Like those are people I still talk to like every day type shit. So
See you on the gram, hang out with the squad.
yeah, exactly. Like right. So yeah, it's like that.
It was fun being known during Baruch for doing a bunch of things and then being known for being known. That was a fun experience.
And thing is like you being known for being known is mad funny because again like comparing that to like how you came in freshman year, like I never saw that happening. So like that was one of those times where like I probably never said it to you, but I was like, yeah, nah, this I love that he got out of his shell because like it was like polar opposite. Like you did a complete 180 in terms of like, going from like a super shy reserved person that probably would have just like found a back corner of a classroom and stayed there to like walking around campus 24/7, saying what's up to people and knowing everyone and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, no, that was a transition. I was just like silently like, yeah, like shout out to him. Like that was dope.
Yeah, my high school friends like you changed.
For the better though. So like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like that whole I change shit is like it's cool and all, but like if it's for the better, like I ain't tripping.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely good to get all the different experiences of like, okay, this is how different like kind of going to all the different clubs and everything, just like different point of views.
right. And I think that's what makes Brook a very interesting place. And granted, like this virtual atmosphere takes a lot out of that. But I think Brook is such a melting pot. Like it kind of like it's a reflection of like New York Brown Lodge, or like it's just like you're liable to meet any kind of person on Brook. And I think that just kind of created for me a lot of very unique relationships with people that I probably would have never thought I would be cool with at all, like ever. Like just doing the eye test, like you don't seem like my type of person. Like, all right, cool, I'm out. But like Brugge is just such a melting pot that you're just gonna constantly be in a situation where you're in the same room having some type of situation. I mean, some type of conversation with people who just come from whatever type of background. So it definitely breeds like very interesting relationships, but then also I think powerful relationships as far as like, yeah, you could be that person that finds your pocket and campus and sticks to it. But I think if you were one of those people who got out of their bubble and just kind of like met a shit ton of people who were doing a lot of different stuff, and then that turns into like everybody graduating from college, but then it's like, okay, cool. Now I know this dude who works in investment banking. Now I know this dude who's in tech, and I know this dude who's in consulting. Like just kind of like now your network is super vast, and I think that's how it translated for me. Where just like it went from like knowing a ton of people on campus to like, all right, now everybody's kind of graduating. Everybody's kind of like finding their pocket career wise. And now your network is very diverse. Now you just have like people you just know in like a shit ton of industries doing a bunch of different cool shit. Like honestly, so yeah, that's kind of like one of those things that from Baruch that I just like really value. Like kind of like 5 years removed, 4 years removed. Like it's like cool. Like Baruch was really dope for that.
Yeah. I'm just like I know a bunch of people in real estate, finance, other designers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know a guy. I have a question. I find somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a quick text like, yo, like you still at this company? Like, yo, let me hear about XYZ. Feel me? Like it's I enjoy that a lot, like more than anything. Especially when I was in that point in my career where I was ready for a transition. Like I had a lot of conversations and like kind of like with people that I had in my network already, just about next steps, what they were thinking about when they were leaving, their previous roles. How did they tackle that recruiting process? Like, there was a lot of conversations that I had around that time, and a lot of it was from people I met during my time in college. So
Yeah. Fun times. Kind of, I miss the people, don't miss the school.
Even if I ended up landing okay out of Brooklyn from a GPA standpoint, like I realized that, like, yo, that school shit is not, like, nah, it's not it. Like, every time I think about, when I go back for a master, I'm like, if it's worth it career wise, I would, but I'm not running into a classroom with a smile on my face, bro. Like, if it's avoidable, yeah, I would avoid it. Like, I just don't. I enjoy the social aspects of college a lot. I don't miss test taking and shit like that. Like, I'm cool,
Running
bro.
papers. I'm just like, I don't care about this.
The papers I didn't even mind as much. I'm really just not an exam person. Like, presentations and papers, I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I could do that. I could knock that out. Presentations I actually enjoy. Exams just gave me so much anxiety. Like, I hated it. So I'm not looking forward to it if I ever have to, like, be back in that atmosphere again. Like,
My
it would
mom,
really have to be worth it.
my mom like, get a master's. I'm just like, no.
Yeah, nah, like, I'll wait. I'll wait. I'm not
Yeah.
running to take a GMAT right now.
I'm just like, which master's program you don't need a GMAT, GRE?
Right, exactly.
Definitely. So yeah. What else? You have a new career. Yeah, how was like in that fear everybody has about like graduating with a job offer? 'Cause I didn't have one. I was like, okay, what's next?
So you're saying, like, what that fear
Yeah,
was about? Um, I'm one of those people. I think I fear the unknown sometimes. So for me, it was less about yo, I have a job, so now I'm comfortable and I could just chill the rest of the senior year. It was more about, yo, if I don't have a job after graduation, what's next? Or how long is it gonna take to find a job? Like, am I gonna have a tough time with it, or am I gonna land pretty quickly? It's just like, it was the unknown part of it that bothered me a lot. It was like, yo, like, I don't wanna, leave college and, like, not have a job for a year or two or whatever. Like, what would I do? And so I think I just psyched myself into being super scared of that optic. And once I kind of, like, got in that vibe, which, I mean, for me, it was more motivation more than anything. Like, I don't think, if it ended up not working out that way, like, I don't think that it would have been, like, the worst shit ever. But I think because I was kind of already in that mind frame, it was like cool. Like, I was just motivated to just kind of, like, interview with as many places as possible and and secure an offer. And so that kind of, like, was where that fear came from. And once I got the offer, it was just like, cool. Like, take a deep breath, enjoy these last few months of college. You get what I mean? So yeah, it was definitely just for me, like, the fear of the unknown and not knowing what would happen if I didn't have a job, and, like, how long would it take to get one after college and all that stuff. Like, I just wasn't trying to find out the hard way. I was kind of like, yeah, like, I rather deal with all this bullshit now, taking 6 classes and interviewing, constantly and stuff like that, if it sets me up for the win later on. So
yeah. I had that same thought. And I was like, well, we can't do anything right now. Let's see what happens next.
yeah. So, and realistically, I mean, I think leaving Baruch, for the most part, as people who are debt free and all that thing, is like, no matter how, if leaving Baruch with a job or not, I think you're left in a pretty good situation because you don't have debt hanging over your head. You kind of the skills that you get out of a demanding college at Baruch too. So you definitely don't feel as if you're not, you know, well equipped to handle, corporate America or whatever. So it was, for me, I mean, for anyone, it should just be a matter of timing. Like, cool, I may not have something now, but it's gonna work out. Like, I'm gonna land at some point, because you just don't leave Baruch, like, not feeling like you couldn't get a job and body it. Like you just work too hard at Brew to ever feel that way. You just meet too many people to ever feel that way. You have too many accomplishments in Brew to ever feel that way. So I think no matter what the situation was, like people tend to be okay, to be honest, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. I met somebody at my job who just graduated from Brew, I think like this year, and they also work in the same
Mhm.
position I am. I'm just like, that's funny.
That's hilarious.
So it was like, wow. It was fun 2 years trying to find a job, but like they made a pandemic. I was like, all right, trying to just survive at this point.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like I was thinking about the virtual experience, like as a student, but like I think as a graduate, that could be like a whole nother struggle, right? Because I mean, y'all was graduating around a time when like the pandemic was kicking off, hiring freezes are everywhere, people are losing jobs constantly and stuff like that. And this is the market that you got to run into and find a job, like like that. It was definitely one of the places where like yeah, no matter how much I hated like my job at Goldman or whatever the case may be, like I had to take a step back and be like, yo, like chill out. Like it could be much worse. Like you have a job that's paying you right now. Like you get what I mean? Like it helps you not take shit for granted and put stuff in like in perspective. Because like, yeah, that's a rough time, and we're not out of it. I mean, I think people are kind of like talking themselves into feeling like everything is back to normal. But now we still in a global pandemic, and we don't know with COVID rates going back up. Like we don't know what stuff is going to look like if we don't get it under control over the next year, stuff like that. Like we about to deal with like these on and off lockdowns for the next 3-4 years. Like God forbid, but like who knows? You know what I mean? So yeah, that definitely wasn't a great time for y'all to leave college and have to go find a job. So I definitely shout out to y'all for navigating that, to everyone, like Baruch, not just in life, navigating that time, because that was rough on everyone. Like that's something we've never experienced before. So
Yeah. And to go back to like the me stepping out my shell, I also like since like middle school I was always like a person who like did things. It's like randomly like, I joined a math team that high school was always like in school like volunteering and working. So like I took that to like Baruch. And then like even like people even now like you still top of mind of like what people want, like people have like opportunities.
yeah, my fault about that interruption. That makes sense, and I think it's dope when you're able to kind of like reflect on those experiences, no matter how long ago they happened, because that's kind of like the stuff that you kind of look back at and say, okay, cool. This led to this stage of my life, which led to this, which led to this, which led to where I'm at today. So I found myself reflecting a lot on a lot of that other stuff. I mean, older stuff rather, like pre high school or whatever, and kind of like trying to figure out like the stuff that spawned from that and kind of like the trajectory more than anything. So that's always fun for me. I think you talking on mute, bro.
Yep. So there's a funny story like on my senior year, there's like a committee on campus with like the staff and faculty, and like they're trying to find somebody to help them out with all that stuff. And like four of
Mm-hmm.
them, somebody was like starting to mention me but not say my name, and then three other people was like, "Are we talking about the same person?" And it ended up being me, and I was like, "That's hilarious."
That's mad funny.
He was like, I was like, "Oh, I gotta definitely watch what I do, because you never know."
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, but I mean repetition's procedure. So like the funny thing is about like life and when it comes to stuff like that is that like people could have totally different outlooks on you, right? Like you could have totally different experiences with people, and then that just turns into like them kind of like having an opinion on you and running with it. So it's very funny when things like that merge. It's just like, yeah, no, it's me. Like it is what it is. I'm gonna be me in every situation. Now, what you perceive of me is on you. I can't control that, but I'm gonna act how I'm gonna act regardless. So
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, that's hilarious."
yeah,
But there was always like, "He's busy, so we will get somebody else." I was like, "Yeah."
right. Be like that, bro.
It was fun catching up. That's supposed to be like a
Not for
while.
sure, man. I mean, more than anything, like appreciate you. extending an invite. I was waiting to be a part of the Let's Get Out of podcast. Like I'm seeing all these group people here. I'm like, damn, my son Zeke don't mess with me no more. Like, what's good? But nah, like, and honestly, like, I'll make the final point before we part ways. I mean, I think you doing a podcast speaks to like that transition I was talking about. Because again, like freshman Zeke, I'm gonna speak for you, would have never did some shit like this. You never wanted to. You barely spoke to people. So and like the times you even had to present, I'm like, yeah, this is not his. Like he's not comfortable. So like the fact that you have a podcast right now where you're just like constantly doing exactly what was making you uncomfortable around that time, all the time, not forced, like just on something like, yeah, I'm like, I just want to create content and this is like something that I'm good at, so I'm gonna run with it. Like, nah, that speaks to that more than anything. So I mean, I'm definitely happy to see the transition you've made over the last few years, and like just I'm excited to watch where it goes from here.
Thanks. I was like, yeah, why not? A lot of times it's just like, why not?
Yeah. I ask myself the question a lot. And someone who just overthinks everything is just like, yo, why not, bro? Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? And when you ask themselves those questions and you land on what's the worst thing that could happen, you gonna do it. But the worst thing ain't ended up being that bad.
Yeah, it's just
Most
like,
things, I think more than anything, we fear rejection a lot of times. It's like, yo, I don't want to do this thing because I might get a no. It's like, right, you get the no and then what, bro? Like, you gonna die or something? Like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. So you might as well.
yeah,
Like, I'd rather get a rejection than not try at all. That's the way I feel about it. Or I'd rather do something and fail at it as opposed to not trying at all. So caution to the wind and give it a try.
well, you know what? Yeah, it didn't work out, but I did it. So I know I'm not gonna do that again.
Right.
So cool. So the last question I'll ask is, what would you name your origin story?
That's a great question that I've never thought about. Honestly, I have no idea. I'm trying to think of like what are the words that I would describe my life to be. And I mean, the stuff that's coming to mind, I don't know, like butterfly effect or some shit like that, where just kind of like, something that kind of represents the growth more than anything. It represents the evolution. So yeah, I'm for the sake of your question, I'm just gonna say butterfly effect, but yeah, I have no idea. That's actually a great question. I never thought about that before. But yeah, I'm just gonna like plug in my Travis Scott fandom right there and just say butterfly effect. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I was like, because I joined the Black History Month committee freshman year. Then met Dr. Lewin, and then sophomore year I did some flyers for him, and then junior year I was in charge of all the flyers for the month.
Right.
And then he said that during one of the events, and then I met somebody who was a diversity person at this thingy called the One Club, which is trying to diversify media.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to like a pitch competition, and then I went to like they had like event called where all the Black people went to it last year. They met somebody, they became a guest on my podcast, and then they transitioned to translation, and it was like, hey, use me as a reference to apply. And I was like, all that happened because of one thing.
Yeah, no, that's fire. That's fire. Those are the things that like you look back at and chronicle, like, yo, this led to this, which led to this. Like, that's what I was speaking about earlier. Like, nah, that's like shit like that coming full circle is always the dopest thing. Funny enough, like even me getting the role that I'm in now at Facebook was that. It was literally, doing American Needs You, getting that AOL internship, keeping that relationship with one of my managers that I had. We connected last year when I was just really kind of like diving into like, next steps. We had a great catch up. And she ended up connecting with a friend of hers at Facebook. which referred me, which ended up leading me to get the role that I got. So stuff like that coming from Soho is always the dopest part.
And it's like, that's a lot. That's a whole, just like,
Right.
even I have the job right now because I have my podcast. I applied for a different position, and then they sent me an interview for the position I have now, and I was like, I didn't apply for this. They're like, because you have a podcast on your resume, that should be good for this position. I was like, yeah.
Funny enough, now I think about it, same. Like the 3 roles that I applied for in her referral weren't the roles that I ended up getting. Like once I was in the system, like another team that I never even applied for ended up picking up my resume and saying, "Hey, we think you're a good fit. Would you like to interview?" And to your point, just kind of like ended up happening like that. So yeah, no, sometimes people have the vision before you do.
They were like, "You're the missing piece." I was like, "I am." Yes.
Right.
When people ask you to help with something and you have no idea what to do, but you just say yes and just say, "All right, I'll figure it out."
Right, for sure.
Yeah, that was fun.
But yeah, bro, like I said, appreciate you having me. Got to run it back if anything, but nah, this was dope, bro. Definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, people work up anytime. So free flowing podcast.
Love it. Let's do it.
I'll let
You
you know
guys
when the
do a
merch comes up.
group one with like a bunch of like the Malay cats.
You Malay like, yo, you
Right.
work for all 10 years, like 12 now.
Oh shit, yeah, no, that would be an interesting one for sure. Evolution of the program. Bye, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime. And
that brings another episode of the Let's Get Podcast to a close. Again, I'd like to thank my friend Bacare for being a guest on the podcast. And for next week, I have my fave one half of Creepy Monster to speak about starting a business and being an artist. I hope you continue that day, and I hope to see you there.